Welcome to my channel. This is Rhonda at Rhonda's Cooking at Home. I hope you enjoy the videos. Have fun and have a great day. We are going to make apples for apple cobbler, and the apples that I have today came off someone's tree, and so they're very organic, but there are some defects. So I'm going to have to do a lot of cutting. There's all different types of ones. We'll look for worms. If there's worms, we can cut around the worms. If there's bad spots, we can cut around the bad spots. But these apples don't have any pesticides or anything in them, and they're going to make an excellent cobbler. Again, we are going to be making the apples for apple cobbler. We are not going to be doing apples for apple pie because it would be a completely different recipe. So the first step is to get the apples washed up and then cleaned up. And since there are a lot of, sometimes I do leave the skin on, but because there are a lot of deformities on these apples, if you can see, I'm probably just going to remove the skin, make it simpler so I can really see what's in the apple. So the first step is to wash the apples properly. So I'm going to just rinse them off just to make sure if there was any bird droppings. Even though I'm going to remove the skin, I like to still rinse them off a bit. I think that's always a good idea. So I will do that. I will rinse the apples off, and then we will get to work on cleaning them up and slicing them for apple cobbler. Move my stuff a little bit closer. Hope everybody's having a good day today. And I will, now on this particular recipe, because I like to double it because the cobbler goes so fast, that I'm going to need 4 cups of apples. And it's going to be more likely 4 heaping cups of apples. So I'm going to just rinse these off really quick. And this cobbler recipe that I'm going to do later is very simple, but remove the skin and such. So that is what we're going to do. Also, what you can do, which I do often, is if I don't have time to make that cobbler today, I am just going to go ahead and put it in the refrigerator, put the filling in the refrigerator. Okay, so I'm going to first peel the apple, and you need a good sharp paring knife. It's always a good idea to have a sharp knife. And I just have a compost bowl I'm going to throw some of this into. So that's a bad spot. I removed that. I'm going to there are a lot of imperfections in this apple. So I'm going to rinse this off. I'm going to slice. Okay, there we go. There's the angle. And when I'm doing a cobbler or any other type of thing where I'm using fresh fruit, I always like to sample it just to make sure it tastes good. So I'm going to just take a piece and make sure that's good. Very sweet. That's what you want. I'm going to slice the pieces like this. And then I need a little bit more than 4 cups, so I'm going to put it in my 4-cup measuring cup. Okay, so let's see, here's actually a halfway decent apple. So I'm going to do this one. This one will not take a lot of time at all. So I like to do that. And some people have apple peelers, and that's okay too. I like to do it this way because for me it's faster, less cleanup. And when I have apples that have so many deformities, this one's actually, like I said, it's a very good one, so it's not one with a lot of deformities. So that's not a problem. But I will take it like this. So this is like a typical apple that you probably get at the store. And it's nice to try to, when you're slicing the apple, to try to make it as best as you can, make it similar in size. So when you cook it, it cooks evenly, you know, it cooks the same, at the same rate. So there's that. So we'll do a few, and then you'll get the idea. But we do need, like I said, 4 heaping cups to do the cobbler, because I'm going to double the batch. So that was a good one. So that was pretty simple. Then you have this, and this is more of a challenge. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to take the top part off as best as I can. Take the bottom part off as best as I can. And then I have to figure out, what am I going to do here? Because we have this situation. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this in half. Then I can see what's going on here. I'm going to take the core out. So there's different ways you can do it. You can do it this way, which is different than the way I did it before, which that's okay too. Whatever you feel comfortable with, and you're not going to cut yourself. That's the important thing. So, well, this one just has so many, it's hard to know. So you can do it this way if you want. And just do a few different styles. So like I said, do what's comfortable for you. Do what's you're not going to get cut with. If you want to use an apple peeler, that's fine too if you have really beautiful apples. So now I'm going to have to cut the bad parts out. Oh. Okay, this one, I'm definitely going to rinse this one off. I have to make sure that it's like good. Okay, so that right now, that's all cleaned up. And then I'm going to get the rest of the skin off. I prefer to do it the other way, but I'm just showing, I want to show a few different options on how you can do it. So that's the coring way. Okay, now I want to make sure that I went down far enough that I have no brown at all, and I don't. So make sure you get anything not appealing off the cutting board. I'm going to rinse that. And again, we're just going to slice it like this. So I'm just filling. So look how much I got already. So I didn't even do that many, and I already got a lot. So we might have enough, possibly, there's a possibility that we will have enough for 2 double batches. So what I did is I rewrote my cookbook, and I went ahead and, this is just a personal cookbook for my favorite recipes. I rewrote it and just doubled a lot of stuff, because in my family, the cobbler goes so fast that you got to double it. So that's what I do. Some people, maybe they'd want to make half this amount. But if I have extra, then I can go ahead and freeze it, possibly, and have a whole other cobbler another day. Okay, so on this one, I removed all the skin. There's nothing terrible in here. There's one little spot I see right here. So I think on this one, I'll cut it in half. I'll take the knife and do this, and this. And then, again, on this side, core it. Everything looks clean. And if you get perfect apples from the store, you're not going to have as much work. But these do taste really good. So it's nice that my husband was able, somebody gave him some apples, and so you have lots of apples, especially these type that you just wouldn't pick them up and eat them, they're great for cobbler or apple pie. But today we're doing the cobbler, so. Okay. Okay. So you don't have to watch me do every single one, so I'll be back in just a little bit and I will show you the next step. Okay, so I did a whole bunch of the apples and took a whole bunch of the bad stuff out, and then I saved for you guys to watch some of the bad ones, just to, again, review. So the best way I think to do this is just, let's get off the skin first. Like I said, everybody has their own technique, and that's okay. So let's just get off the skin first, and get off the skin. Okay, so I'm getting the imperfections of this apple out. So I took the skin off, and I'm getting the imperfections out of it, and I'm just putting it in a bowl for compost later. So that's pretty good. I'll rinse this off. And then we have another really nasty one. It's like, where do you start? So, best thing, I usually don't have apples that have so many spots in them. So, usually it doesn't necessarily take as long. Especially if you get the apples from the store. But these came off of someone's tree, and they are super good. So let's just get the bad stuff off first. And you want to go down far enough. You don't want to taste any of that stuff. So let's get it. Make sure you get enough of it off, because you don't want to go ahead and eat any of that, because it'll make the whole cobbler not taste good. Okay, so we got this, and then I'm going to do a few of these now that I got all the imperfections off. I'm going to do a few of these just to also just show you that it's not going to take you like a super long time to have something very good, and it tastes way better than canned. So first thing I'm going to do is cut this in half, and then gets the most amount of apple. You go like this. Take that out. On the other side. And then of course you want that part right there that has like where the seed was. You definitely want to go around and get that hard part out. And then of course all the seeds. As best as you can do. Everybody has their own technique. That's okay. The important part is when slicing the apple, as best as possible, and I don't do it perfect either, so don't think that you have to do it perfect, is just try to kind of make the slices similar. And then I'm putting it into a measuring cup that's 4 cups. And there's a lot of air, so it's going to be like 4 heaping cups to really get 4 cups, because there's a lot of air holes. So I mean, that's one way you can do it. So I'm going to do this apple already. I'm doing it this way, so I'll stick with it. Do it this way. And then again, take your knife and just turn it. And if you want, you can do a few of them. You can do a few of them like this and then slice them all up. Now, on an apple like this one, it's not even round because I had to remove a bunch of stuff, and I'm seeing that I got to even remove more stuff because there's a little bit of brown. So maybe the best way to do this, instead of trying to cut it in half and all that, is maybe just do this. And some people would prefer this technique anyway because maybe they're not comfortable with the knife. So you just get as much apple off as possible. And then again, slice them as best as you can to go ahead and make it as even as you can so that they cook at the same rate. But it doesn't take a tremendous amount of time. A lot of people think when you do something from scratch, it takes a tremendous amount of time, and it doesn't, especially if you can prepare your apples ahead of time and make your cobbler later. then you don't feel like you're committing to all that time all at once. Because sometimes people only have maybe a half an hour to do something, but then maybe later they might have another half an hour, especially if they work, if they have kids, if they have grandkids they watch, or if they have a puppy they have to take out to go to the bathroom. Hey, I just took the puppy out and now I have I know I have a half an hour, so before he has to go again. So whatever the situation is, sometimes doing things in steps makes it easier for a lot of people. So, like I said, on this, it just depends which type of apple you have for how you want to do it and what you feel comfortable doing. Because you don't want to do something you feel like you're going to get cut or it's uncomfortable. You're not familiar with doing this sort of thing. So do what makes you feel comfortable. So now I'm almost to the heaping cup, but I have these apples here. So what I might do is I just might make all of them, and then whatever fits in my cobbler will fit in my cobbler, because I seem to have more apples than I thought I did, because I thought I'd be cutting away more, actually. Honestly, I didn't think I wasn't even sure if I was going to have enough, but between this, between the skin and all the bad parts I'm cutting away, I didn't think I would even maybe have enough to do one cobbler. So, you will see. Okay, so I did that method on that one. So I think you saw enough of that method. I'm going to do the method where I just cut it in half and then do this. And then I'm going to go like this and turn the apple. Be careful not to cut yourself. And you should definitely use a cutting board, and definitely not too small of a cutting board. I mean, you could use a small cutting board. It might take you longer, or you just have to lay your apples out on a plate or something. So I'm just trying to get the cores out of here. And I think everybody now has the idea. I think they saw me do enough of them. And depending on how your apple is, depends kind of maybe how you really want to approach it. Because in my situation, and I've done this a lot, I felt more comfortable doing it two different ways depending on the shape of the apple. But again, like I said, these are very tasty apples. I took off the skin just because there was a lot of imperfections, and some people just don't even like the skin. So it's a good taste, very good tasting apple. I think I'm just going to continue to do this, and I'll be back with you in just a few minutes to go ahead and do the next step. Hi, I'm back. Okay, so it appears that we have way more apples than we need, which is okay because you don't want to have less than you need. So what I'm going to do is that we're going to go to the next step. And the next step is to put the apples in the pot that we're going to cook them in. So here is the pot we're going to cook them in. And I'm going to add my heaping 4 cups. So not having enough is a problem. If I have too much, that's not that big of a deal. We can deal with that. Okay, so I'm putting a heaping 4 cups of apples in my pot. Heaping cup. And I'm going to measure, and just out of curiosity, see what do I got going here. Do I have enough to do a whole other cobbler? Maybe. Dogs. Something fell. Relay Tessa. You know what? Look at that. I have enough to do 2 cobblers, 2 large cobblers. I'm going to go ahead and put that in, so I'll know that. So which is good because I'll probably end up freezing some of this, and then it'll be easy to make cobbler later. As I will show you what I do. So apples are pretty moist. You don't want to overdo it and make it mushy. And these apples are pretty kind of soft and sweet already. So I'm not going to need a lot of water. I just don't want it to stick or burn to the bottom. So I'm just going to, just a little bit of water, like not much at all. Just going to put it in here. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use a generous amount of cinnamon, because when I do apple cobbler, I like to use a lot of cinnamon. I don't use cinnamon with peach, although you could if you really wanted to, but I like a lot of cinnamon with my apples. So just a generous amount. There's no particular amount. I don't measure it. I'm just kind of guessing. Same with the sugar. These apples are fairly sweet, so I don't want to put too much sugar in it, but I need a little bit of sugar. So approximately for this amount, I don't know. I'm just going to kind of guess. I'm going to go, let's see, well, I think I need more. Maybe just a tad more. And I think that's about it. So we're going to try that. And we're going to go ahead and go over to the stove and see what happens. Okay, so now we're at the stove. And we have to watch this very carefully. So I'm going to put it on like a medium heat. I don't want to overcook the apples because when I do the cobbler, I will be cooking the apples again in the oven. So I'm going to mix this up. Because we want the sugar and the cinnamon to blend well. Mixing it up. And the cinnamon and the apples make your house smell like fall to me. Autumn, fall, however you like to refer to it. It makes it smell very good in your house. Now some people might want to add vanilla, they can. I don't for this particular recipe. You could always take any recipe that I give you and make it your own. Add what you like. So you don't have to, this is just kind of a basic idea. Maybe you went ahead and made cobbler before, maybe you made it different than me. That's okay. Everybody has their own way of doing it. This is my way of doing it. You might take your way and my way and blend it together and create something completely different. But this is just some ideas. So we will cook this for a little bit. Okay, depending how ripe the apple is and depending on, you know, the many factors. Now this particular, what type of apple it is. Now this particular apple, honestly, I have no idea what type of apple it is. My husband brought him home from someone who said, hey, want some apples? He said, sure. And then I said, oh, are those eating apples or should we bake with them? And he said, I would definitely bake with them because you guys have all seen how they were, and you just, it's not the type of apple you just bite right into. You really want to cut it up and see what's inside of it. But like I said, I tasted it. It's very sweet, and it should cook quick because it's kind of a little bit softer, so I wouldn't want to overcook this. But I definitely have to heat them up, and I will show you what the apple looks like when it gets to the point where it's actually ready. So in the meantime, you don't want to stir too much. You want to occasionally stir. So I'm going to occasionally stir these apples. Just make sure. And it's starting to steam a little. And excuse my camera situation here. I'm just learning how to go back and forth between me and what I'm videotaping. And so I will pause this for a second and redo the angle. Okay, we're back, and I am keeping a close eye on this because you really don't want to go ahead and overcook these apples. Like I said, they will be cooking in the oven for about 30 minutes later. So I'm partially cooking them. Mostly it's making the cinnamon and the sugar really come together and getting the flavor of the apple. So this will cook for a little bit, and then we will look at how it looks when it is. Hey, We're back, and I think I'm going to add just the smallest amount of water to this. You can see it cooking. It's doing okay, but I kind of feel like I need just a touch more water. Okay, it wasn't a lot of water, but I think, yeah, that looks about right. So I will cover this and check back in a few minutes. Okay, we are getting very close to being done with this because I don't want to overcook it, like I said. So we're really, really close. And it's like I said, it's making the house smell wonderful, which is really nice. It's starting to get cold, and the smell of cinnamon apples in the air is just wonderful. So what I can do to test it, I mean, you don't want to taste it because you'll burn your tongue, so you don't want to do that. Okay, so I'll take that knife that I was using to cut them up and just maybe take one and just kind of go through it and just see, is this ready yet? Very close, but not quite yet. Very close. Just, I think, a couple more minutes. But like I said, this will make 2 cobblers, so that's good. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to make 1 cobbler, and then I will probably, more than likely, freeze a batch, and then I'll put for 1 cobbler. And like I said, I converted my recipe, which was originally an 8x8 cobbler, to a 10x15 because the 8x8 would go so fast. But if there's not a lot of people in your family, or you're not big eaters, you could probably get away with an 8x8. In videos coming forward, I am going to show you how to double a recipe. I will show you how to cut a recipe in half and show you that sort of stuff. So that's, you know, that'll be coming soon, how to do that. So we are just really close here, and the next step will be having to cool things off so that they can be refrigerated, because you don't want to ever put hot stuff in plastic. So that's the thing. Okay, so now it's starting to get soft, so I am done. I have to take this off here immediately, take it off the heat immediately. I'm going to cover it for a few. So that was pretty quick. You know, it didn't take very long. So this is what it's looking like. It's looking like that. And it's going to be, so that's all ready. So I'm going to cool that down. I'm going to put eventually half of that, which is going to be like 4 heaping cups of apple. I'll freeze it. Pre-did the apples. So here they are. And they're still a little bit warm, which is okay. You don't want them really hot because then it might start cooking the topping prematurely. So I have a cup of butter in the microwave melting. Let me go check on it and see if it melted. All right, so we have melted butter, and then I'm going to pour the melted butter into a 10x15 casserole dish. Okay, I'm going to leave the camera angle right here for now so you guys can see what I got going. Okay, so we have the butter. It's all over the bottom of the pan. And now I'm going to take the apple, which is approximately 4 heaping cups of apple, because I like to really have it spread evenly on the pan. You want to have it be a thin layer. And when I did this earlier, I ended up It looks like I had enough for actually 2 apple cobblers, so I'm going to freeze the remaining apples so I can do this another time, because I'm not going to do back-to-back cobbler, because that would just be way too much cobbler to eat. So, but I do like to have a lot of apples in it, so I'm going to make sure there's not a lot of space. Okay. All right, so that part's done. I'm going to set this other pot aside, and now the topping. So I'm going to do a couple, okay, all-purpose flour. That's the first ingredient. Now this is important. I'm going to show, actually I'm going to move this here for a second. I'm going to show you the proper way to measure flour. So when you measure flour, you just lightly go into the container, and I like to put the flour in a container opposed to having it in the bag, because there's just not enough space in the bag for your hand to work properly. I take the back of a knife, or if you have something that's just super flat, that works too, and you go like this. It's easier just to show you than to tell you. And that is 1 cup of flour. I'm going to put it in my bowl. And I need 2 cups of flour, so I'm going to go ahead and go like this again. You never pack flour. You just do it just the way I showed you, just like that. Put my lid back on, keep it fresh. The next ingredient is a couple cups of sugar, 2 cups of sugar. And I keep it in containers, and I label stuff just to make it easier. Now with plain white sugar, it's pretty much like the way you did flour, and you just level it off, because exact measurements do make a difference when it comes to baking. Not so much when you're just cooking dinner, but when it comes to actually baking, it's actually like a science, because you have to have it exact. And then you go ahead and level off the 2nd cup of sugar. That's done. And we have the next ingredient is 4 teaspoons of baking powder. And see this little lip on your baking powder? You could use that. If you don't have a lip, because you have one of the huge ones, you could again use the knife. And it's the same idea as the flour, whereas you level it off. You don't press it down or anything, you level it off. And I need 4 of these. So also try not to lose track of counting, because that has happened before to me, and then it'll be a flop. So I will count. 1, 2, 'm at the bottom of this one, so it's a little bit more difficult. 3, I get all of it, measuring it correctly at the same time. 4. Okay, so I have my 4. Now, that's the dry ingredients. So when I have dry ingredients, what I like to do a lot of times is just take a fork and blend in the dry ingredients. Okay, so I just used a fork to do that. The next ingredient is 1.5 cups of milk. Believe it or not, there's actually a proper way to do this also. Okay, so 1.5 cups of milk. Do I really want to have to get out another measuring cup? Not really, if I can avoid it. So I am going to rinse this one out thoroughly. actually all going into the same thing, so it doesn't matter. Okay, so a cup and a half, excess water out, a cup and a half of milk. Now, over the years, I used to drink 2%. I will talk to you while I go get the milk. I used to drink 2% milk because I thought it was better, and I came to find out that actually whole milk is better. Well, I do know one thing. I mean, it's debatable. Some people think they should drink skim milk 2% or whatever, but I will tell you this. With baking, whole milk is definitely better. Okay, so the proper way to measure liquid ingredients is you have to have a liquid measure. Not this type that you can see through. And I need a cup and a half. So what I have to do is literally bend down and look at the cup and a half and go eye to eye with it and pour it till I can see it's straight across. It's a cup and a half. And a lot of people don't realize that. A lot of people have no idea that there's actually a way you're supposed to measure liquid measuring. So now I'm gonna put it in here. And okay, so now I'm going to move this over to my standing mixer. You can do this with a handheld mixer as well, whatever you prefer, whatever you have available. Some people, if you don't have a mixer, by the way, I've seen my daughter go ahead and do a lot of this sort of thing by hand with no mixer, even though she has one, but sometimes she just doesn't feel like having to deal with that, so she just does it by hand. I prefer the mixer because it whips air into it, and not only does it whip air into it, you know it's really mixed well. And I'm just going to get my splash guard really quick. Now you might ask, why do you need a splash guard? I have tried running one of these standing mixers without a splash guard, and maybe there's people out there that it works okay for, but I tend to have everything that go flying in the air, so I really don't want to clean up the mess. So I have my splash guard. Now, partway through, what I like to do, because it doesn't seem to matter what you're making, it gets, the sides have an issue, so I take a rubber spatula and I push down the ingredients to make sure everything is actually getting mixed together, because it's very important. I think that separates, you know, from it coming out to be a mediocre cobbler to a very good cobbler, or whatever you're baking. Proper mixing is essential, I think. I'm going to make it go kind of fast. It's going to be a little bit loud here. Okay. In the meantime, I've preheated my oven to 375. My oven personally takes a while to preheat, so I like to do it ahead of time. So before I even start it, I did that, and that just, maybe your oven preheats quicker. The other situation with my oven is we live in a higher elevation. Instead of altering the recipes, over the years I have found that I don't need to alter the recipes at all. All I need to do is cook them for longer. And so, depending where you live, you might cook something for longer, you might cook it for a shorter period of time, and most importantly, it really depends on your oven, because all ovens are different. So you know your oven. So if it says to cook it for 30 minutes and you know your oven's going to take 40, I always like to set the timer for 5 or 10 minutes before it's supposedly going to be done, just to do a look-see and see where we're at. Okay, so now the next step here is to pour the batter onto the apples, which of course are sitting on top of butter, and doing it evenly, which is not always the easiest thing in the world to do. So you have a couple of options. You can just do it, which I'm going to just try to do it and hopefully I get it right, or you could take a ladle, and that sometimes works better, but I'm just going to try to go ahead and just pour it. And then I might need my rubber spatula to get more out. And you really want it all covered. And you kind of want to cover it as evenly as you can possibly get it, so that you don't have one side that's higher than the other. Because again, you want this to cook evenly. Okay, I gotta get all, that's what I'm doing. I'm scraping it with a rubber spatula. If you don't have a rubber spatula and you want to do a lot of baking, that's probably something you should put on your wish list to get. So that's kind of how it's going to look. Okay. So the last step that we have here, now most people, that's it. They pop it in the oven, they're good to go. But over the years, we have modified this recipe. My husband and I have decided to put something on top because we like things extra sweet. If you don't want it extra sweet, just throw it in the oven, and when it's brown, it's ready to go. We like to put brown sugar on it. Now, if you don't have brown sugar, but you want to put a little topping, we did try one time, and it was very good, was to take maple syrup and just drizzle it on the top. I'm opening up the brown sugar if you're wondering why I have a scissors. Okay, so I just take some brown sugar, and I try to do it sometimes actually some in chunks almost. So I'm just going to try to do it kind of evenly though. And this really gives it a nice kind of like a crusty sort of thing. Now I know everybody has different cobbler recipes. This one is the one that I like the best. It's super simple. I love apple pie. Apple pie is absolutely my favorite thing. But this is easier. I'll be honest, it's easier than apple pie. And sometime in the future, I'll do an apple pie and show you how to do that. But this is usually my go-to because I can get this done very quickly if I have a busy day and I don't want to have to worry about making pie crust and doing different steps, because the apples itself, that's different than the apple pie. You have to put in other ingredients. So this is simple, and also it feeds a lot of people. Like sometimes I'll make this at Thanksgiving. Even though I'm making pies at Thanksgiving, I'll make this at Thanksgiving as well, because it does feed a lot of people, and it gets you your craving for an apple dessert for sure. Okay, so I am going to put this in the middle of my oven, and I'm going to set a timer for probably 30 minutes, even though I think it's going to really take me 40 minutes, but I want to double check. So we will be back when this comes out of the oven, because I want you to see how it looks when it's finished, so you kind of know when to pull it. So I'm going to set a timer in the meantime, and we will be back. See you soon with the finished apple cobbler. Thank you. Hi, it's Rhonda again, and I have pulled my apple cobbler out of the oven, and I will show it to you. It's very hot. To adjust the camera angle here. So, it's very hot. Let me get some hot pads. I can angle it for you. So notice it's like a nice brown. And this time it took me about 35 minutes. Depending on your stove, the humidity in the house, there's a lot of different factors to consider how hot your apples were to start out with. And so that depends. So it was 35 minutes this time. So anyway, it is going to be very yummy. The whole house smells really good. And thank you for watching, and see you next time. Bye. Have a great day.